to the Money RX for CRNAs podcast, where you go behind the scenes with host Brett Fellows, CFP, as he explores the unique opportunities and challenges facing certified registered nurse anesthetist along the path to financial independence. In each episode, Brett shares expert insights and actionable advice, equipping you with the tools you need to take control of your financial destiny and retire on your terms. And now, here's your host, Brett Fellows.
Welcome to the Money RX for CRNAs podcast. On today's episode, I am thrilled to welcome Dr. Rick Tennesen, the Regional Anesthetist Director for TeamHealth's Southeast Division. Now, I had the pleasure of meeting Rick at a recent industry event, and I knew immediately he'd be an incredible guest for the show. Not only because of his impressive credentials, but also because of the energy and authenticity he brings to every conversation. Rick's journey is one of constant growth and transformation. He began his career as a nurse's aide and worked his way up through the ranks of critical care and nurse anesthesia. And along the way, he earned multiple advanced degrees, including a DNP, an MHA, and executive leadership training from Wharton School of Business, all of which prepared him for the unique blend of clinical and administrative leadership he brings to his role today. As Regional Director, Rick now oversees anesthesia operations across dozens of hospitals and outpatient centers, where he focuses on mentoring clinical leaders, improving system-wide performance, and navigating the evolving challenges facing CRNAs and healthcare systems alike. In our conversation, we dive into everything from the operational and financial pressures in the anesthesia world to what it takes to become a successful leader in today's healthcare landscape. Rick also shares why TeamHealth's clinician-led model sets them apart, how the organization is adapting to growing demands and provider shortages, and why mentorship, flexibility, and curiosity are key to long-term success. So whether you're a student just starting out or a seasoned CRNA exploring leadership, this episode is packed with practical insights and honest reflections. And with that, I hope you enjoy today's episode of the Money RX for CRNAs podcast with Dr. Rick Tennesen. Dr. Richard Tennesen, welcome to the Money RX for CRNAs podcast. I know you're okay with Dr. Rick, so we'll use that today. But we're excited to have you on our show. And as I was just mentioning offline, one of the reasons I reached out to you, we met at Florida at the Surf and Sand Symposium, I think it was called, event. I felt your personality was very vibrant and energetic, and you'd be a great public speaker. And honestly, from our side, I'm excited because we always talk about numbers. It's fun to get away from the numbers for a little bit and actually talk to somebody who's shaping the experience of CRNAs from the inside out. And so that's why I had asked if you'd be interested to being a guest on our show today. And that's why I'm excited to have you here.
Thanks for having me, and I appreciate that.
So I'd love to, just for our audience, get a background for you. Can you, especially your education, you wear a lot of hats and you've had very extensive education. So I'd love to hear what, from nursing to becoming a CRNA to your doctoral and then into leadership. I'd love to hear about that path.
So I'm Rick Tennesen. I started in a hospital when I was 18, was a nurse's aide, nursing assistant while I went through nursing school. Undergraduate BSN College Misericordia in Dallas, Pennsylvania. Worked for 2 years thereafter in cardiothoracic ICU at the Wilkes-Barre General Hospital. Pursued pre-master's anesthesia courses at the University of Scranton. Went to St. Joseph's University, Nazareth Hospital School of Nurse Anesthesiology. Got my MS. Following that, I decided that I wanted to pursue academic or teaching anesthesia. So the program that I went to did not have a health sciences division at St. Joe's. It's largely a business program.
Okay.
So I got a DNP from Wilkes University, and then at King's College in Wilkes-Barre, where King's and Wilkes actually share the same bookstore.
Okay.
Which is interesting.
Yeah.
MHA with a graduate certificate in executive leadership as well. I pursued that prior to the DNP mandate because I knew it was going to be coming, but because I wanted to teach. And it was around that time that my program underwent a voluntary closure because there was a lot of schools in Philadelphia and they were all vying for the same clinical space. And at the same time, when the DNP mandate came out, they didn't have that health sciences division. So that sort of didn't help the program in any way. We considered rolling it into several other programs. There weren't a lot of viable suitors where that had infrastructure to support a DNP anesthesiology program at the time. So I just started teaching on the side. And then I worked in a level 1 trauma center for the greater half of a decade.
Okay.
And at Reading Hospital in Pennsylvania, basically doing just about everything.
Yeah.
And then I moved into a leadership role with UPMC in central Pennsylvania. For a very brief time, I was their chief anesthetist. And then through a series of unusual events, became the director of anesthesia services for the system in central Pennsylvania.
Okay.
And so that had 8 hospitals and 5 outpatient centers. We sold one of those hospitals, or closed, I should say, one of those hospitals. So it was really 7 for the majority of that time. And then this role became available. My role now is the Regional Anesthetist Director for TeamHealth. And I moved to Florida for that because the lion's share of our accounts are in the greater Southeast. And then in addition to all that other stuff that I mentioned, I had some other experiences that weren't necessarily academic that I did, but one of them I did the CNO development program through the Wharton School, and that was with UPMC.
That's a lot. So how long are we talking? What time frame is that? Is that a 10-year time frame? All that education?
Without adding it up, I'd say accurate. But
yeah. So you were at a level 1, and then tell me about that shift to leadership. Although you had the teaching on the side, you'd been doing that, felt like you knew you wanted to be teaching from an early stage, but that transition to actually being in the trenches to leadership tell me about that. How did that come about?
Yeah, I didn't really have a lot of formal leadership training or leadership background or what have you. So to be brief about it, there was a vacancy that was supposed to be filled, and then through some unsavory situations and circumstances, that person never showed up, leaving a void. And I just happened to be in the right place at the right time.
Okay. And then from the education that you took at Wharton, how would you describe your leadership philosophy today? How did that all shape you as a leader?
I just think you need to be a little bit of everything. And this is an easy thing to answer because it sounds generic. Just say it's flexible and fluid, but understanding the situation, the circumstances, understanding the facility, understanding the individual. Every place is different. Every individual is different. Every situation is slightly dissimilar. So looking at everything uniquely and then being able to pivot and be flexible with the appropriateness of a response and the appropriateness of action, I think is the thing that you have to be. You have to be very flexible and fluid, and you have to be prepared to take on just about anything. So I think just being flexible and open is the best thing you could be.
Yeah, that's great. And then your most recent role with TeamHealth. Can you tell us about TeamHealth? And you are Regional Anesthetist Director for the Southeast Group. Can you tell us about that?
So TeamHealth is a multi-service line healthcare business partner, in this instance, anesthesia. Okay. So traditionally, TeamHealth was largely emergency and hospital medicine in all 50 states. And through successes in both being relational with facilities and leadership, as well as with providers and taking care of facilities and the needs of a community, those organic relationships prospered and lend themselves to anesthesia isn't something a lot of people understand. It's not necessarily a language a lot of people easily comprehend. And that can be hospital administrators or even providers themselves. And so as hospital systems grow and integrate and things get more complicated and complex, they go to a known partner who has been successful and that they trust. And again, it's an organic relationship. And I think they said, hey, how can you help us with anesthesia? And that is now our third largest and fastest growing of our disciplines. And we are now we're not in all states, but we're certainly growing very fast and we're not very far away. Most people know us through ED.
Okay. And what is Southeast in TeamHealth's mind? Is that the Carolinas all the way down to Florida? You said most of your facilities are in Florida?
Yeah. So the Southeast group is Virginia, Virginia-ish down to Florida. And the Northeast is also Virginia up. And the West group is basically anything west of the Mississippi, plus or minuses on the greater Southeast, which would be like the Alabamas, that sort of region. But my territory is basically East Coast, Southeast Coast.
Okay.
And then there are three of me. There is a Northeast version of me. There is a Western version of me. And then we all have a partner, which is a regional medical director, who's a physician anesthesiologist who we partner with in what we do.
Okay, cool. So such a big picture view of all the different operations throughout the Southeast. What does a typical week look like for you?
That really depends. It could be anything from something as easy as at home working and taking meetings and supporting clients and supporting providers. So each facility that we represent has chief anesthesiologists and chief anesthetists who may have needs. And those are what we're supposed to be there to help lend expertise to.
Gotcha.
Or it could be there's just some information and fact finding, or we're doing some operational things. There are some new developments that need to be worked on, or I could be doing clinical, or it could be something like travel extensive where we have to go visit the clients for quarterly business reviews where we're presenting to the C-suite and letting them know what our performances look like, what opportunities may exist in their facilities based on the information and analytics that we can provide as part of the service that we provide. It really varies. It really depends, but it could be a great many things.
Really cool. What are some of the biggest challenges and opportunities in managing these anesthesia services across all these different facilities?
The biggest challenge in anesthesia right now is operations finance. And the reason for that is the market has really taken off. And because there are a number of facilities that continue to expand anesthetizing locations, so that's OR growth, demand for volume, and demand for the service, and most procedures can't take place without anesthesia, the growth on that side has outweighed the growth on the provider side. So the number of providers has been relatively stagnant and hasn't increased and doesn't show any signs of increasing while that demand continues to increase. So you have 10 hands in a cookie jar with 2 cookies. And what's happening is the anesthetists and the anesthesiologists are in demand. So their valuation has gone up. And so you have a lot of different companies and organizations that have provider services that are trying to find new and clever ways to navigate how to mitigate that demand while also finding the resources to be able to provide that service. So what's happened is it's become a much more costly service line to provide. And that has become a concern for, I'll just call it the healthcare system at large. Each facility, particularly those with thinner margins, need to find ways, clever ways to try to find what is it about our culture that we can accentuate to keep and attract providers, or what is it about the way we provide service that can keep and attract providers without having to go back to just the gravity of finance that would attract people. So that's the biggest challenge, I think, by far and away.
Or someone I'd love to figure out who thrives, switching gears to at TeamHealth. I guess maybe you and I were in the CRNA world when we met, but for a CRNA who may not know much about TeamHealth, how would you describe their culture?
So because it's clinician-led, I would say that it's very, very much it's going to speak to a traditional provider. And the majority of clinicians are what I would call traditional, right? They're trained to be clinicians. They're trained to be good with their hands. They're trained to take care of patients and provide the service. And that's the environment that you're going to spend the majority of your time in. So you want to work in an environment that's conducive to promoting that skilling. That's going to be one where you're supported as a provider and where you feel like the organization that you work for is truly a partner in how you conduct that business.
Right.
So because we are clinician led, I think it really gives us a little bit of an advantage over some other organizations that exist out there. But the way that we also have a culture of individual skill set, we don't say top of licensure, depending on who you are, what your designation is professionally. We are, if you're a sound provider and you're clinically skilled and you have the desire to provide a particular service, then we're supporting you to do. We want our clinicians to be happy. We want our patients to be well taken care of with a high quality service. And we want to make sure that our clients are happy. So by making sure that we focus on those that provide the service, we make sure that our patients are taken care of and that the clients are pleased. Being a clinician-led organization, I think really lends itself towards TeamHealth's being a great place to work and providing a good working culture.
That's cool. I was going to ask, I don't know if you've gotten this feedback yet, if you've been there long enough, but what do you think surprises people the most that have joined TeamHealth after they join that group?
It really depends because some people have worked with us as students, so they joined and they already know who we are. I think it's when people come from an external entity, organization, or other third-party provider, where they've either had an unsavory experience or they're just looking for something new or any other one of those life circumstances that brought them to us. And people are traditionally going to be a little bit skeptical about how does this organization work and what makes them any different? Because we talk about that all the time. And when they get immersed into that environment and into that culture, and then they see how we conduct ourselves and they see the people that they work with and work for and the relationships that we focus on building and the way that we work with our clients and the way that we're very transparent about the way we conduct business, I think that sends a message to the providers that this is a great decision that you made and that you don't have to be nervous or skeptical anymore. And it helps build a good trusting relationship. And in this environment where there's such that heightened level of competitiveness and that there are so few providers, making sure that not just attracting candidates or providers, but finding ways to really speak to them such that you want to retain them is an important part of what we do operationally.
Yeah, that's such an important point. I was thinking of some of your support systems, even as, like you say, it's so important, even just the onboarding, continuing education, mentorship. How do you can you talk a little bit more granular about that at TeamHealth?
What I was saying before, one of my roles is to be that sort of additional layer of support to our anesthetist leadership. So if we have several dozen accounts in this region, and not all of the CRNA leadership are going to be multiple years of experience. Some of them might be newer. Some of them might have a lot of years of experience, but they're new to leadership. So one of the things that we have at TeamHealth outside of me is we have our LEAD program, which is in Knoxville where our corporate offices are.
Okay.
It is where we were founded. We send all of our leadership to LEAD. They get a week-long, basically, introduction to our executive leadership. The CEO will show up and speak to the group, other operational leaders, and they talk about who we are and what we're really trying to do, how we try to do that. And then that translates into when they come back and see us, they're like, we get it. We see what you guys do, and we see the same stuff that's being prevailed upon us by the executives. And we now understand who we are and who we're really working with. But then what I do is anytime we have anesthetist leadership who have questions or they're looking to how to navigate a situation, or it's just something as easy as interpersonal relations, navigating the sort of politics of anesthesia. And what I do is we have a conversation or a one-to-one, could be 30 minutes to an hour. And sometimes there's also let me add that there's associate chiefs or chief CAAs even. And my job is to help lead these providers, help develop and cultivate these providers as best I can with the resources that I have available to me. So we really want our leadership to feel both independently empowered, but also to feel like they have a resource available to them when they come to that situation that they haven't experienced previously.
Love it. Love it. That's cool. So back to you a little bit, what keeps you inspired in this work today?
I think I've always been just intellectually curious. I'm one of those individuals who I enjoyed school, I enjoyed learning, I enjoy new experiences. But I think what I like about what we do here is every client's different, every provider dynamic is different. There's regionality associated with different challenges at a particular facility. All of those things are new and unique and constantly evolve. There's turnover in nursing, there's turnover in nursing leadership, there's turnover in operational and executive leadership, and that relationship building component. I think being a little bit of a people person, you alluded to that.
Yeah.
And that's a great opportunity to help establish the brand that you work with and work for by being someone who's a bridge builder, a relationship builder, and helping build the trustworthiness that extends to the clinicians and also to the leadership side of things. So we're a good connecting point for what goes on in the business office and what goes on in the operating room.
Yeah. Are there many, I was going to ask, what would you suggest to a CRNA who's maybe thinking of becoming a leader like yourself? Are there many people doing that? What would you say to them?
There aren't, because there's different levels, right?
Yeah.
There's different levels of leadership. I think the biggest difference is that there are people that go and get an MBA or get an MHA, and you can get a little bit of the understanding about what some of the operational and financial metrics and numbers are. And some of it is rote memorization, but understanding the business of anesthesia is dissimilar from just healthcare in general or from clinical anesthesia. And I talk about schools doing a really good job at developing clinicians, whether it's the medical side or the anesthetist side, but not everyone that comes out of school. And by the way, some of them are the same thing with education. Not everyone is built to be a teacher or taught to be a mentor. So I think what schools could do better is maybe working with students or working with clinicians to learn more about how to teach and also learn more about the business of what it is that we do. Because a lot of people, they show up and they're worried about their paycheck. How it gets there, the business backside of things, is a relatively new venture to a lot of providers.
Yeah. I'm curious, kind of where do you see the future of the CRNA practice headed, and how is TeamHealth preparing for that?
So I think that what's going to happen is, this is a little bit of a political question. I think there's a lot of things that are going to change in the anesthesia community. I think CRNAs and other advanced practice providers are moving closer towards independent practice.
Yeah.
And what that really means is there are more demand for service and fewer providers. And the way the care team model of anesthesia works is you generally have a physician who supervises or oversees several ORs that are usually provided by anesthetists of whatever designation. And unless the ratio of those numbers changes, where there's one physician that can expand to the number of rooms that the anesthetists can cover, the only other way to mitigate that demand is by expanding the scope of practice of what they refer to as advanced practice providers or mid-level providers.
Okay.
So I think the best way to explain that is the expansion of independent service being provided by anesthetists is where things are going. And then how TeamHealth is preparing for that, I will say that TeamHealth has a very progressive approach to the way that we deal with practice modeling when we look at new services or when we look at new facilities or when we are doing business development. So if a client or a prospective client says, hey, we're experiencing challenges and we're trying to figure out how to navigate this, we're open to all methods and modes of the way the service can and should be provided, depending on several different variables, of course, the severity of case types or the diversity of case types. All of those things factor in whether those kinds of models can make sense or not. So again, having a little bit of understanding about how practices can be modeled, I think is important to understand. but we're fairly progressive because we're open to any different way the service can be provided that best serves the client, the community, and also TeamHealth.
Okay. Very cool. And since none of us seemingly love change that much, according to AANA, if over 50% of the CRNAs are over age 50, how do they like that? How are they adjusting to that change? Do you find that they're burnt out, they don't want to, or are they pretty accommodating to it?
So I tell people this all the time. I get asked about one of the most common questions students ask is, how does TeamHealth feel about CRNAs doing independent service, or about doing their own blocks or doing this or doing that? And I'm always like, it depends. I'm like, I have providers that have 20 years of experience and they have zero interest in doing any of that stuff. And then I have providers that have 20 years of experience that want to do everything. It's really a independently driven sort of desire. Some people, when they get out of school, they want to do pediatrics. Some people want to do labor and delivery. Some want to do a little bit of everything. Some want to do trauma. Some want to do cardiothoracic surgery. It's what speaks to you as a clinician. And I think one of the things that's beneficial about TeamHealth is when I talk to students and I say, what is it you're really interested in clinically? They might say trauma. Then I can talk to them about a place where we do a lot of trauma. Or if they say they're interested in labor and delivery, I can talk to them about an L&D intensive practice. Whereas we have so many different clients and so many different opportunities for them, we can tailor what opportunities might be best for them as a good marriage, rather than trying to put people anywhere.
If somebody wants to look more into TeamHealth and opportunities, I think the website's probably the best place to start and see the jobs available. Is that a fair statement?
TeamHealth.com, text or call me.
Okay.
I always tell everyone, if you're willing to want to talk to me, Ouija board, smoke signal, carrier pigeon, I'll take however you want to talk to me, we'll make it work. And I'm pleased to speak to anybody.
Great. We will be sure to have your contact information in the show notes below. Rick, thank you so much for your time today. I like to finish with one question. What's something about you that we couldn't find on Google?
Oh, wow.
I put you on the spot there.
That's and the thing that most people, I always tell them, I have a little bit of a hidden talent. I can, almost anybody that I'm around long enough or I've spent any time with, I can either mimic, I can do a lot of voice impressions.
Oh, really?
Or I'm very quick with like dynamic cues of the way people behave. So I can act like someone else, or I can usually mimic their voice. And I do a lot of voice like characters with my kids. With I do Mickey Mouse. We were at Disney the other day. Yeah. So I think that's my hidden talent.
That's awesome. I had visions of Saturday Night Live or something. So all of a sudden I was like, oh, you could be there. You should, hidden talent. That's wonderful. Again, thank you for your time today on the Money RX for CRNAs podcast.
I appreciate you.
Thank you.
This podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only. It should not be relied upon as a basis for investment decisions. This podcast does not engage in rendering legal, financial, or other professional services.